we replicated every single neuron fibers and then clock architectures. This is me more than 10 years before. Then I was working with my PhD students in Japan. So you see that spinal cord and every single nerve fiber, we gave a name and then we did. In the background, you can see that these clock architectures, for every single brain component, when we try to find primes, these are called Daivik numbers in the scriptures. So each and every single component that is there in the brain, we took it and we built a polyatomic time crystal model. And then in the organic jelly, we sent the light and we tried to see magnetic interaction. You see the blinking. This is from the helical nanowire systems, which is fundamental in our artificial brain-based system. The complete brain model is many, many clocks, and one of them is neuron, as I said. These are very simplistic presentation of the whole human brain. So thank you very much for introducing me, and thank you for Jadishwar for inviting me. I was listening to the previous speakers, and I felt like my talk would be a little off the track that is going on. But I would like to tell you that I also work on Indian knowledge systems, and I was listening to the panel discussion where the speakers were talking about building AI tools from different ancient Hindu scriptures and concepts. What I would like to suggest that those people who, those speakers and those who are interested in Indian knowledge systems, I would be very happy if you could tell me at the end of my talk or later sometime, what are the different principles that I have used from Vedic scriptures or Hindu chronology of intellectual discourse. I have used them in Build the Real Technology, and currently we are pursuing with some Silicon Valley Foundation to implement the technology for replacing the LLM hardware, because you know that in current silicon-based hardware, it's very difficult because you need gigawatts of power supply. By 26, 27, you need 5 to 6 gigawatts, and by 2030, you need at least 30 gigawatt, and some estimates say it's even more, 40 or 50 gigawatts of power supply, if we want to maintain this particular course of development. So I started this artificial brain research 2005 when I first came to Japan, and then I started setting up my lab and started working. So let's see what is this and why we are trying to change LLM, because you see our brain uses 20 watt, roughly 15 to 20 watts of power. And this laptop I'm using to talk to you uses 65 watts. And we are talking about gigawatts of the LLM or transformer will be housed in the hardware. So what was going wrong, and what about we wanted to correct, and why we want to replace the LLM hardwares with artificial brain, and then where do we want to go, and with our startup or investors. We already got investors. We are pursuing for the company to launch in a few months once all the agreements are over. So I have been always interested in looking into the brain state. So these are the top row that you are seeing is for different mental state. The thermal, if I take a thermal image of your face, for different emotional state, you will find very different kind of thermal signal. So that was the perception. When I started working long back with the human subjects, we found that humans in the world could be divided into 12 categories. And some humans, their nose get cold or heated up. You can see the left side, the lady had a similar kind of thing. Some of them, the eyes go brighter or colder. So different part of the face is responsible for different kind of human. So we thought that, is it infinite? No, it's few. So there are very peculiar changes that happens in different humans. So understanding the human brain, its emotion, its perception, its cognition is not a small challenge. So I just wanted to show you that I'm working with the brain. That doesn't mean that I will build a computer and then tell you, okay, this is the brain. It's something different. How it is different? So you know that neuron is the unit of information processing in the brain, and that is the foundation of AI. So in 1943, McLeod and Pitts say that, okay, you give potential, you integrate it, and boom, burst. So it's just like a 0101 type of thing. But we, in 2016, we published this. We made a camera that could see different time domain, how you work. So the contribution that I have made in my entire life of 26 years of research career is that any biological system that you take, and if you do the experiment, if you look at many different time domain, for an example, I am talking to you, my conscious experience is in 50 milliseconds. Okay, but my neuron is firing in milliseconds. But is that all? If I go to microsecond, what will be happening? If I go to nanosecond and image my neurons and in the components inside neurons, and we found that there is a plethora of activities that is going on different time domain. So since I was doing PhD in Calcutta in cultivation of science, when I was a PhD student, it was always in my mind that I didn't believe the way we were characterizing. We were sending a particular frequency signal to a device, and when it was coming back, we were reading it. And we were trying to understand a material, a system like that. But always I felt that if I am talking to you by sound, why can't you talk to me with infrared? If I talk to you with a magnetic field, why can't you talk to me in different? So conversation could be in every single time domain. So I'm talking to you with, say, sound, few hertz. I could be talking to you in microwave, using radio wave, using light, using many different kind of thing. But in PhD, it is very difficult to get that. But when I became independent researcher, just after PhD, then, I mean, I was lucky to explore my dream, and I started looking into many different time domains simultaneously, just for a single neuron. And I found at many different time scale, they interact. So we published paper that neuron circuit that you are seeing in one time domain, this is this, but in different time domain, 1,000 times faster, if you look at it, it is communicating with many different kind of other neurons in a very different way. If you look at, say, nanosecond time scale, then you will find it is interacting with many different kind of neurons in a very different way. So different time domain, if you look at it, you will find different kind of circuits. So that fundamentally challenges the might of artificial intelligence. So this is what we did in the early phases of my career in my 30s, and that's how the philosophy started. So right now I have just written a book, Silicon AI Has to Go, and organic brain will take over. So you can get it, and if you have Kindle Unlimited, this book is free, because majority of my books were very expensive. So always people used to complain that it's too expensive. So I made it. So what I found is that imagine these are different clocks, and you have different kind of geometric shapes. So clocks are there, many different clocks with many different universes. So millisecond, microsecond, nanosecond, picosecond, and those clocks are there. They are like geometric shapes. So you see many kind of geometric shapes. They can dance with each other, and that is the information structure, not bit, not qubit. We call it polyatomic time crystal. So you can see that it is a singularity through which you make a journey. You start with one, you can go inside and inside and inside. So clock inside a 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 clock. It's like a escape time fractal architecture, the architecture of time. So basic premise is that many different kind of clocks, they come together, they emit singularity bursts, that they come together, and then they form the information architecture. So and so basically we build the organic brain that almost looks like a neural network of the entire human brain body system. I will show it today. And the final frontier of that would be when that artificial brain would look at itself and evolve every single time domain that is out there. So, so these are my students many, many years back. They were working on very simple systems with sensors and others. And then we had students who started modeling every single component in the brain-body system and trying to understand if there is a geometric self-similarity from which we will grow the entire system. So objective was very simple. I wanted a self-operating mathematical universe is a proposal that we gave, that I'm talking to you. I mean, it was decided that I will give lecture because it is a Sunday night, so I will give from my home. I talked to Jatishwar, and then we decided, okay, I will come here. I set it up, and I changed everything so that the file is smooth, and then very high speed network I get to talk. So entire thing was not programmed. So programming or AI, the way it is, we are doing it currently, I think there is a fundamental flaw in it. If you write lines of instructions, you create slave. And we created slave in the 1940s to kill many, many humans for the sake of the World War. And that is how the old information theory came in. So new information theory that we are talking about, we replace 0, 1. We say that cavity structures are there. These are just like nested cavities. These are just musical instruments. So if you send energy or noise in the cavity, it will create resonate, and it will create certain set of frequencies will be allowed in the cavity, and this is leaky cavities, and it will network. So that is how your entire brain body system neural network has been created. So this is Rutuja's work many, many years back. And then with our experiment, we found that there is a triplet of triplet, many kind of bands, frequency bands are overlapped with each other, interact with each other, and entire time domain, the temporal architecture is like a mandala that you can see. And if we want to make really a hardware, we should follow this. So we started making organic jelly, helical nanowires, because helical symmetry we found that is the most fundamental symmetry. By 2008, 2009, we filed US patents and European patents and patents at different parts of the globe to suggest, to report that fundamental information processing unit in the brain would be a helical system, like in the DNA, in the microtubule. If you look at the galaxies, you find helical system. If you look at the elementary particles, you see the track, the path is nearly helical, or vortices are there. So the symmetry is important, not the device. You can differ for different scale. You can take different devices. So we started building the organic jelly, and we try to replicate, and we try to see. And then we, instead of neuron fiber, these are the early days of our work. And we replicated every single neuron fibers and then clock architectures. This is me. More than 10 years before, then I was working with my PhD students in Japan. He is now assistant professor at IIT Mandi. He's working on quantum computer development. So you see that spinal cord and every single nerve fiber, we gave a name, and then we did. So when I'm talking about artificial brain, it's not an entertainment, it's not a buzz. For 20 years, we have gone nerve fiber by nerve fiber. And not just that, I mean, I can't describe all. The Puspendra was working. Right. Oh, God. This is the voice. Many, many years back. These are very, very old systems. So Puspendra was working, and in the background, you can see that these clock architectures for every single brain component, So we have a database also. So now database I have shifted from Japan to IIT Mandi because Puspendra has taken over. He was very thin then. I mean, it's a long back. So we modeled the brain on 47, and we started searching the primes, so that the primes are the fundamental codes. Um, uh, and I hear that many of you are talking about Hindu scriptures. When we try to find primes, these are called Daivik numbers in the scriptures. And then if you go to the book, I have talked about two things. One is the debate between Maharshi Kapil and Arusi, Purusha-Prakriti duality, and that is fundamental in my research. And second is Kashmiri Shaivism, where there were 114 times Parvati says that I don't understand, and then Shiva explains that to understand the fundamental thing of the universe, you have to look at the difference between the rhythms. So if you see the nested clock architecture and the difference, how it comes out, you can find a shadow of that particular thought. But that's not everything. There are many different Maharshi Gautama and the Vaisheshika Sutra and others you'll find in Kala Chakra. Everything you will find has been implemented while building the technology. So this is from my 2020 book, Nano Brain. We mapped entire human brain and the neural network system with nested clock architecture. So this is something look like. So this is primarily Puspendra's work. So many students worked, but slowly everything was compiled by Puspendra to build it an integrated brain architecture. So imagine when you are talking about conventional AI, it's just one of these clocks. So each circle is a clock. So 1023 different classes of clock architectures. If you put it topologically, a manifold is created, and that is the what kind of thought process that goes on in the artificial brain. So uh, mm, so so each and every single component that is there in the brain, we took it and we built the polyatomic time crystal model. And then in the organic jelly, we sent the light and we tried to see magnetic interaction. One of the most interesting thing that happened in my life is that when I started my career, then I thought that nature cannot. I'm sending microwave, say 2 gigahertz, and the device would respond 2 gigahertz. This is how research used to be done. And even currently in India, any laboratory you go or anywhere in the world, they send 2 gigahertz, they look at 2 gigahertz. But in the 1960s, non-demolition concept came. And later I found, but I was very desperate to look into it, that I will send sound and I will look at the magnetic field emission. I will send light and I will look at the microwave or radio wave emission. And then finally, I discovered that different modes interact together and they linked together with a beautiful mechanical changes. And this result, you see the blinking. This is from the helical nanowire systems, which is fundamental in our artificial brain-based system. These are the magnetic. In the magnetic film, they are liquid film and nickel nanowires. They actually blink as the time passes by. And it's a very simple setup. The solution is there with the helical nanowire. And just we are looking at it in the magnetic film. So the idea was that in the brain jelly, we will give this nested clock architectures. So each clock has a different time. So time is inverse of frequency. So corresponding frequencies with a phase gap, we will give it to the gel. Gel will grow from single molecule to the large scale, and the information will be processed. So we published multiple papers with the organic jelly-based computer. And then this is real gel in operation. So gel network cluster and cluster and cluster and clustered in the large scale. So we were shining light on it. And the idea is that if there is a magnetic vectors and then magnetic vectors, then they come together inside a cavity. So cavity is important. Patra, sthan, kal, patra, space, time, and the cavity where you put. So cavity architecture is there, and then with spatiotemporal dynamics unfolds with the network of cavity. And if you look at the solar system also, you will find the magnetic vectors. If you take all of them, it creates a beautiful nested spin collaboration system. So when we say that when universe gets created or neural network in the brain gets created, magnetic vectors creating the manifold is important. So these are many different kind of, with the frequency we changed, and we look at the optical vortex created and magnetic vortex created by the system. So vortex, why we did it? If you have a, you heard, because you are all students of IKS, you know, in Indian knowledge system, they say, um, you need a very, a pond with no ripples, and you throw a tiny subtle ripple, and then that could be seen. So nature uses this technology very much. So every single case when we are transporting, we never transport electron. So if when you switch on a light in a room, when you enter, if you switch on, it's not electron that goes there and then your light is on. It's electron from switch, it enters into the circuit, electromagnetic field goes. Otherwise, if electron goes, then it will take years for your switch on. So imagine if ions move in my brain and giving me thought process, then I will be like a tube light, you know, blink, 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 blink for 6 years. And you will be sitting there for 6 years or 7 years to understand what I'm saying next, because my electron has to go from, so it's a micrometer, it's a drift velocity is micrometer per hour. So basically, effectively, from going from one part of the brain to another, it will take many, many years. So it doesn't happen even in your electrical circuit. If you have a copper wire connecting the switch to the light or the fan in your room, so it's the electric field that goes. So you have to understand. So magnetic vortex is the thing. So it's a ripple. Magnetic ripple, optical ripple, this kind of vortices is the transporting system in the brain and in the AI that we are developing. So as you can see that helical nanowires, they build neural network, and complex architectures or circuitry is generated. And how many circuits? So if you see, for every single brain component, we put one kind of thing, and we follow Brodmann's region. So Brodmann in the 1880 or 1910, he dissected the brain and found that there are 47 different regions. Initially, he thought 53, but later it was changed to 47 different kind of circuits. For each circuits of each kind of neural network, we created one kind of gel architecture. So it is not just, I will take a molecule, I will make one circuit and I will claim, oh, I made the brain. No, every single one of those neural network circuits that is there, out there for practical reality, we created, we designed, synthesized, and built and replicated those. Their polyatomic time crystal or the nested clock architecture vibrations are shown. The resonance frequency band is shown, and optical vortex generated is shown. So it means for each of them, we found their class, the way they do the information processing. So here you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 and 8, 16. And here are the rest. So you see 47 different kind of organic gels we created and we injected. How do we do that? So the complete brain model is many, many clocks, and one of them is neuron, as I said. These are very simplistic presentation of the whole human brain. So our AI, when we are saying that we want to create the next generation of AI beyond LLM, when LLM will stuck with the power, we are talking about this kind of systems. Each clock runs by itself. The metabolic, non-metabolic, thermal energy, electromagnetic energy, whatever be the energy, but the clock runs, and then these clocks, relative relations between the clock, their positions, that helps us to create geometric invariance. That is foundation of the AI that we are introducing. So you can see the gel, and you can see that in the lab we were working, and we are fixing it for this is the whole brain, connectome, spinal cord, hand, leg, and everything. And then we will inject the gel. So this is the software, that whole brain polyatomic crystal, and this is in my lab. This is it. So we put it in the oil bath, and let me go ahead. So in the lab we were doing it. So let's look at the communication. So when we put two brains side by side and we allow them to communicate. So we put a put a system on the brain. As I told you, I never believed in my life that in one time domain the interactions happen. So I created, you see, that microsecond, nanosecond, seconds, millisecond, in all time domain, two brains, they are interacting. And whenever there is a synchronized communication between them because of the electromagnetic field induced bursts, so that is recorded here in the raw data. So we built sensors on the brain, and then we replaced the one human brain with the humans, and we asked them to play music and interact with them. And this is in Okayama Prefecture, in the World Science Festival. We gave this brain, and then one German artist came to our lab, and he wanted to play the music to the people and allow their subconscious mind to interact with it. So these are the two brains. We kept it live with all the softwares and everything for you won't believe, for months, and they worked, and you don't need to do anything. And they are very good when in the new NIMS canteen there is any conversation or anything goes on, 10:30, 11 o'clock, when everybody goes for tea, these two guys become very active and they start showing beautiful music. So for every single human being you enter inside, it plays a very different kind of music, very close to the person. We are not saying we are realizing consciousness, but I mean, this is just from far. Okay. So you have many such thing. So what we do is from the interactions of the brain, we find out the geometric invariance. If any of you are following the AI, because AI revolution is going to change everybody. We don't need students, we don't need professors anymore. I mean, you don't have to come to me to ask, because one of my friend, Martin Timms, he from 2008 onwards, all my publicly available lectures, he put all my published papers, articles, blogs, interviews, which are available in the net. He put everything together and created Vishwa in England. And instead of talking to me, he talks to Vishwa and that LLM. And that actually learns, and then it speaks better than me. So many times he asks me that I asked about this topic to Vishwa, and Vishwa responded like this: Anirban, what is your view on this? I said Vishwa talks better than me. So in the future, when AI will take over, AI will not come with a big stick or a gun, with your head, that okay, come, I want to take over. No, you will yourself give, because you have transformed in your life in many, many different ways. Your mentality, your thought process, everything was transforming, and many, many versions of you got deleted and disappeared in history and oblivion. That doesn't exist, but it exists faintly in your memory. And when a AI tool, say artificial brain, will be holding that continuously. Now AI can, but it is very, 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 very costly. What we are providing is a very cheaper solution to that. So what do they do is they take the geometric invariance. I don't know how much all of you are aware about, but those people who are working on LLM's next version or next version of AI, the ChatGPT or whatever you are using, is coming. Yeah, at the deepest level, they look at geometric invariant. So geometric structure, for an example, all kind of nuclear reaction related information will follow this kind of geometric transformation. So whatever you ask, very fast, it can provide you very highly intelligent response. So in future, that country will rule the world. Future currency will be geometric invariance. Those who will have, there will be a bank of geometric invariance where you will be storing all this kind of information, and you will be using them as a token. I mean, because you know the mystery and you know how to get it. So these are the geometric invariants that we are discovering, and transformations, how it happens during the communication process, or manifolds, how it is changing. when there is a electromagnetic signal. So in summary, what I have tried to argue here is that when you see escape time fractal like architecture, so you say slowest clock is big, and then faster and faster and faster clock. It follows the principles of Kala Chakra, and then a beautiful theorem by Maharshi Gautama, and it's called Architecture of Confusion. So Nietzsche, the philosopher from Germany, he wrote a book on this architecture of confusion. So I would like to end with Maharshi Gautama's this particular quote, because that inspired me a lot. So what we tell, our parents tell us when we are kids, that look at the facts and find many, many, many facts. I mean, where are the facts? Tell me the facts. This is how you solve the problem. But this concept came in during World War. This is not Indian at all. So there are 12 different ways decision makings were there. So I am extensively working on different kind of IKS systems of AI and building them. And 12 different kind of computing system I have developed. One of them is what I have presented today for the artificial brain. And here I have used architecture of confusion. What does it say? If you want to solve a problem, then you do not find the facts. You find what is the biggest confusion. And how do you do that? Confusion he has defined. And I, as a scientist, got humbled the way Maharshi Gautama defined confusion. And he gave 8 different criteria how to find a confusion. You have the same source, but different outcome. You have different sources and one outcome, and both coexist. When this kind of contradictions would be there, so 8 different situations he mentioned, then you find a confusion. So you find a confusion which cannot have any logical conclusion or decision. So what you do, try to go inside that confusion and find what are the other confusions that you have in that set. And you go inside and inside. You get a temple-like architecture, and you reach a point when you find the fact. So there is no confusion. You know it. So when you reach there, that creates the basement of the temple. Whole architecture is the solution of the problem. Isn't it beautiful? But this is just one. There are 11 different ways of solving problems or making decision. So we are a race where we created many different kind of fundamental computing, many different ways of automatic decision making, and running system by self-assembled manner. And we can create a whole range of industrial revolution based on the technologies that we had. So I feel pain when I see people, they are trying to take the ancient Indian knowledge system and trying to build, replicating the Western civilization and their fundamental concept, and trying to build kind of AI tools, some kind of algorithm, some kind of understanding and something else. I feel pain for that, because that's the reason I stay away from the Indian knowledge system researchers, because I felt that the way we Hindus, we built our idea of the universe was look at the cosmic thing, identify the origin of the universe, and then implement it in our lifestyle. And our thought process was fundamentally very, very, very different from the existing thought process. So if researchers were listening to this, and then you can go and look at my books, and there are lectures on IKS. If you look at it, try to think by yourself and try to build something which your heart responds. Your heart says that, okay, this is how it could be. Because many of the knowledges we have lost forever. A fraction of it is out there. Taking those kind of knowledge, what is still available, and taking them and putting it in a computer, and then equations and mathematics, and then trying to say that this is much greater than what it should have been, is deeply painful, frustrating, and it will lead us nowhere. anyway, finally, thank you for listening to my thoughts and our works that we have carried out more than 20 years to build artificial brain. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anirban, for that very insightful and rather mind-blowing session. Groundbreaking work, I must say.
Hello, good afternoon. Myself Pallavi Patil. I'm PhD scholar. My question is, can we compare your created brain with human brain in terms of age? Basically, uh, we know that 10 years of child has that much of intelligence compared to 20 years. So, is there any measurement of your created brain?
Yeah. So a couple of things. First of all, it is not conscious. What we have done is a very primitive copy. It's much more advanced than the existing AIs, but it is much more primitive compared to human. So we cannot say these are human. These are not alive. Uh, uh, because during the evolution process, when you are listening to this talk, every minute, millions of protein molecules needs to be discarded because they are fluctuating, their secondary and tertiary structures misfold, and you need to replace them and you need to rebuild them. So the supreme intelligence of humans come, as I understood from our research, is because many of the devices we can discard, we have taken them to an extreme level of information processing. So that is not out there. So I have argued in my book, as I mentioned in the beginning, Silicon AI has to go and artificial brain will take over. I mean, that book is free in Kindle, so you can read it. So what we have said is that once we will be able to replace the component, take every single time domain, dynamism should be at the extreme level so that even device has to be compromised and replaced by a better device that I am doing, you are doing, every one of us continuously doing. We should be thankful to the 4 billion years of Earth's process of how protein evolved and then created those dynamic systems. So until that happens, we cannot compare an artificial brain with the human, because human level, that kind of information processing. So therefore, we are not in a position to compare the age. What we are doing, which is mind-blowing and others, is looking at multiple time domain of human response and replicating it in an artificially system and showing that there is a very powerful way of information processing and AI. So showing something magical doesn't mean that it is going to challenge the might of the 4.5 billion years of evolution process and perfecting a system in particular time domain. Of course, humans are not absolutely perfect. Only we have perfected the nanoseconds domain, that is a protein interaction time domain. In the later part, higher level, we are not replacing much. We are doing it and only at one level. So if we were able to do it at any of the level in the artificial brain in future in our technology, then definitely we can match. I believe that we can match human level performance. At this moment, we are not even close.
So, yeah, my question is, while we have understood the consciousness is the primary thing for all human evolution or everything, and here the artificial brain which we are seeing without consciousness, so this looks a bit contradictory, that we are not having definitely not the consciousness in it, in the artificial brain.
What is your question?
So question is this artificial brain without consciousness would overpower the human brain, or I mean, is this possible without consciousness anything gets developed where the consciousness?
First of all, your first statement that you made, may I correct it a little bit? First of all, we don't know the single protein were conscious when those proteins came, because majority of the proteins, the tubulin protein that you have mostly inside the neuron that makes microtubule and others, those are abundant. The critical proteins of your only 2-3 very critical proteins are there in the brain when you are thinking and doing the processing. When they came 4.5 billion years ago, I mean, we are 1.5 million years old, this body that you are seeing here. So if we say that 4.5 billion years ago consciousness was there and it was directing the evolution process, that's a totally different kind of debate. And that will bring God into picture, and I don't want to, because I personally I am Purusha-Prakriti duality believer, and I don't think that God brought consciousness and then started evolution on this process, because I am a very strong believer in the Purusha Tattva. So I would like to say that consciousness drove evolution process. That is not true, because right now you are evolving, your brain circuit is evolving. When you are thinking, because of plasticity, it is evolving, and you are conscious about here. That consciousness is not driving. It's a very different process. For an example, for you, you have microbiomes in your body. Your genetic diversity, total genetic diversity in your body, if it is 100, your DNA, your body's actual DNA that you are carrying is not even 0.01%. So 99.99% of your genetic diversity is carried by microbiome, different kind of living creatures that are there in your body, in your mouth, in your gut, in your intestinal systems. So suggesting, life is an interconnected thing, and then consciousness could also be an interconnected band argument that we have created. So when you try to see what we have tried to do is to link many different time domains together. So that is exactly why we are so powerful. We are connected to everything, and that mode of operation, how could we connect to everything, was missing when we were building technologies. So in that sense, I try to look into it a journey towards that development process, understanding, changing the basic unit of information, redefining the integration of information, and advancing forward. But this kind of process, instead of Turing machine, that is our computer is built, and this approach is much more natural and generic. I would like to remain in that domain of transformation. Maybe several centuries later, if the technology goes to that level, we can answer that whether consciousness was very essential, how consciousness came into being. But for me, my major concern is that the information theory and information principles using which we created weapons to kill and for mass destruction and genocide, that was never a proper respect to nature, and learning the information processing protocols from nature is the first step to go to that direction, and that is what we have tried to achieve. So it is not it is just a beginning of the transformation, and my argument is at that level, not at the level of achieving consciousness or something like that.
Struck you that you chose time as the building block?
Yeah. So basically, I was looking at the nearly 4 billion years ago, a nanowire came. So neuron, if you look at it, neuron, and inside that there are many parallel nanowires. So I took those nanowires many years back, 17, 18 years back, and started measuring them. And when we found the frequencies are shifting together, and then phase is quantized, it's exactly because I'm from a musical family from Bengal. So I mean, I could see the music. I could see the music alive in those strings. So when I saw it, I couldn't do anything. Honestly, Jyotirban, I would like to say that for 4 or 5 years, I was just looking at those frequency data. Frequency are shifting, phase is shifting, and then they are doing what? Then I came up with this architecture of nested clock architecture, and then that we called polyatomic time crystal, the architecture of time, or in the Hindu system, you call it Kala Chakra. So many times, many universes in Mahabharata and many other places, you will find that you go to different universe where time is, time is very slow. Brahma's time scale, you say Indra's time scale. You find very non-linear, many different kind of time scale, and you go to those universe and time redefines. I found them in the proteins, in the neurons, and in different kind of biological structures. So that's how I got inspired that we need to build this kind of unit of clocks of many sizes: bigger size, slower clock; smaller size, faster clocks. And those clocks I need to put together. Then it is very easy to describe the way the information processing was happening as I was seeing it with the experimental instruments. This is why from experiment, because I understood very well by 2005, 2006, 2007 that people are copying. They are not challenging the might of the existing information theory or information processes. What they are doing is they are using the 1940s Second World Era information unit, which were created, and I read thoroughly, and I could convincingly tell myself it was never extracted. The unit of information was never extracted from nature. It was extracted from imagination. How can I make a slave, a machine that can do faster, that can decode the radio signals, and jam radio signals, and listen to the voice of the enemies. So those are the objectives to do that. And when I learned from natural systems, billions of years old devices. How do they communicate? How do they? I mean, still I'm filled with microtubules. I mean, whole body, every single cell, billions and billions and trillions and zillions of them every moment. And those were not created now. They created 4.5 billion years ago. Though I'm a human is 1.5 million, 1.2 million years back. But they are billion. 1 billion is 100 million. So it's a huge, we are just now we have came, but we are carrying those kind of systems. When those information architectures were there, I started with it. But when I found that if I follow that principle, I can make much powerful AI, much powerful image processing, image detection, and I can use it in kind of a very advanced AI. Then I shifted from basic information theory to this architecture of time. So it's inspiration from nature.